Imagine. It is the year 92 AD. You are 17 years old. This morning, they separated your hair with the tip of a spear, an ancient tradition to mark the end of your childhood. You are dressed in the flammeum, a fire-colored veil meant to protect you from evil spirits. To the crowd cheering in the streets of Rome, you look like a dream. You are Aelia, daughter of a powerful family, and today you become a woman. Walnuts are thrown, people laugh, and torches light the way. But under your veil, you are terrified. You noticed things that others ignored. You saw your mother look away when she kissed you goodbye. You saw a strange man in a dark tunic following the crowd, carrying a leather bag of surgical tools. And most importantly, you know that inside your new home, something is waiting for you. Something no one ever talks about out loud. Marriage in Rome was not about love. It was a transfer of property. The moment your husband carries you across the threshold, you stop being a person and you become an asset, an investment that must be verified. We are told Roman weddings were elegant and holy, but the history they tried to erase is much darker. What waits for Aelia in the shadows is not a celebration. It is a physical interrogation, a ritual so disturbing that for centuries, historians tried to burn every record of it. Aelia stands in the dark. Her husband, a man twice her age, does not look at her. He looks at the Pronuba, the older matron, who stands there with a cold face. She doesn't ask if Aelia is ready. She doesn't ask if she is scared. She simply points to the corner of the room, to a wooden structure hidden under a heavy cloth. "Bow to the protector," the matron whispers. In a few moments, the cloth will be removed. Aelia will discover the face of Mutinus Tutinus, Rome's shadow god. A god whose name made even scholars blush, and whose ritual for young brides was so brutal it destroyed all innocence. Welcome to the hidden history of Roman weddings, a world where law, religion, and flesh came together to create a trauma that the empire tried to take to its grave. In the streets, the crowd is shouting Talasio, a traditional wedding cry. Her husband lifts Aelia into the air to carry her over the doorstep. To the neighbors, this looks like a romantic tradition, but it has a darker meaning. It mimics the ancient rape of the Sabine women, a time when Roman men took their wives by force. Once the door is bolted behind her, the music of the street dies. Aelia is no longer a citizen. She is now under the manus, literally the hand of her husband. He now has the legal power of life and death over her. Aelia expects to be led to a private room. Instead, she is brought to the center of the house. Waiting for her is a group of strangers. There is the Pronuba, a ritual supervisor who will not leave her side all night. There is the doctor she saw earlier, cleaning a bronze instrument. And there are the witnesses. In Rome, a marriage is like a land sale. You need witnesses to watch the delivery. You need people who can testify in court that the transfer was completed correctly. Aelia realizes with a chill that her wedding night will not be private. It is a public record. The Pronuba moves toward the covered object in the corner. She speaks in a voice that sounds like cold stone. "Before the man comes the god," she says. "To ensure you are fertile, to ensure you are submissive, you must first greet Mutinus Tutinus." As the cloth falls, Aelia sees it. It is not a beautiful marble statue of Apollo or Venus. It is a crude, realistic wooden figure of a phallus. This was the shadow god of Rome. Ancient writers like Augustine and Lactantius tell us that every elite bride had to undergo this ritual. It was designed to physically prepare a virgin for what was coming next, and to do it in front of witnesses so that no one could ever claim the marriage was unstarted properly. Aelia has a choice. She can refuse, which would bring shame to her father and cancel the legal contract, or she can submit to the wood and the witnesses. In the silence of the villa, she realizes her mother's warning was true. "Do not resist," her mother had whispered. "It only makes it harder." The real ritual is about to begin. The Pronuba does not use gentleness. She guides Aelia toward the wooden idol. This is the moment where religion meets trauma. According to the writings of early Christian authors like Arnobius and St. Augustine, the bride was required to sit upon the god's symbol. This wasn't just a symbolic touch. The language used by historians, words like inside deer, suggests a physical mounting. Why? Because in the Roman mind, a virgin bride was like unplowed land. This ritual was meant to break that land, to prepare her body for her husband, and to show the gods and the witnesses that she was now an open vessel for future heirs. Aelia is not alone. Her husband watches, the physician waits, even the slaves stand in a circle. In our modern world, we see this as an unspeakable violation, but to the Romans, this was verification. If Aelia cried out, if she bled, if she submitted, it was all documented. If there was ever a dispute about the inheritance or the legitimacy of a child 10 years later, these witnesses could be called to a court. They would testify that yes, on her wedding night, Aelia was physically opened according to the law. Her body was the contract, and this ritual was the ink. You might ask, is this real, or is it just propaganda? For centuries, people thought these stories were invented by Christians to make pagans look bad. But the fragments tell a different story. Even Varro, a famous Roman scholar who lived long before Christianity, mentions the presence of Mutinus Tutinus at weddings. The Romans didn't write about it in detail because, for them, it was as normal as breathing. You don't write instructions on how to breathe. The silence of the Roman historians is unto sign that it did happen. It's a sign of how deeply it was embedded in their culture. For Aelia, the nightmare of the idol is over, but the doctor is now stepping forward. The religious rite is finished. The medical inspection is next. After the ritual with the idol, there is no time for Aelia to recover. The physician steps forward. In wealthy Roman families, the bride's virginity was a legal asset. To ensure no one could complain later, a medical exam was often required. The doctor isn't there to comfort her. He is there to verify the status of the property. He checks for signs of the ritual's completion and documents her physical state. Every detail is whispered to a slave who notes it down. Aelia is no longer a girl. She is a biological evidence folder. Then comes the consummation. In our world, this is the most private moment of a couple's life. In Aelia's world, privacy was a luxury she couldn't afford. In many elite Roman households, the door to the bedchamber remained open. The Pronuba, the matron, often sat just outside or even inside the room. She was there to give instructions, to ensure the act was completed according to tradition, and to be a witness. The flickering lamps were not for romance. They were so the witnesses could see. Every sound, every movement was part of the legal finalization of the contract. At dawn, the house wakes up. But for Aelia, there is one last humiliation. The sheets are inspected. The Pronuba gives her final report to the husband's family and Aelia's father. The transfer is complete, they say. The blood on the sheets and the testimony of the doctor are the signatures on the bottom of the marriage contract. Aelia Terza is now officially a wife. The girl who walked through the door yesterday is gone. In her place is a woman who has been measured, tested, and verified by the state. She has fulfilled her first duty. She has survived the night. For nearly 1,000 years, this was the reality for Roman brides. It was the water they swam in. But in the 4th and 5th centuries, a massive shift began. The rise of Christianity didn't just change how people prayed, it changed how they saw the human body. Christian leaders like St. Augustine were horrified by what they found in Roman bedrooms. To the church, Mutinus Tutinus wasn't a god of fertility, he was a demon of obscenity. If a woman had a soul equal to a man, she could no longer be treated like simple farm property. The church demanded modesty. The open doors were closed. The witnesses were sent away. The erasure was systematic. Across the empire, the wooden statues of Mutinus Tutinus were smashed and thrown into the fire. The rituals were banned by law. But the Christians didn't just stop the practice. They tried to delete the memory. Scholars stopped copying the texts that described these wedding nights. Architects plastered over the wall paintings that showed the rites. Within a few generations, the secret of the Roman wedding night was buried so deep that even the descendants of Aelia forgot what their grandmothers had endured. This is why you won't find these stories in your average history book. We like to imagine Rome as a place of white marble and pure logic, the foundation of Western law. But the law of Rome was built on the absolute control of the female body. By erasing these rituals, the later historians weren't just being polite. They were protecting the image of civilization itself. Aelia lived for many years after that night. To the world, she was the perfect Roman matron. She managed a large household, she hosted dinners for senators, and she performed her religious duties with grace. She likely never spoke of her wedding night, not to her husband, and certainly not to her daughters. In Rome, silence was a form of survival. By the time Aelia became a grandmother, she probably viewed the ritual not as a trauma, but simply as the way things are. This is the most terrifying part of history, how quickly the unthinkable becomes the normal. Rome is often celebrated as the cradle of modern law and order. But Aelia's story reminds us that civilization often comes at a price. It shows us that a society can be incredibly sophisticated in its art and philosophy, while being systematically brutal to its most vulnerable members. The rituals are gone, the statues are dust, and the names of the witnesses are forgotten. But the scars on the foundation of our history remain. Aelia was silenced by her culture, and then by time. But by telling her story, we refuse to let that silence be final. If you want to continue uncovering the hidden, often darker side of human history, subscribe to the channel. What other secrets is the past hiding from us? We'll find out in the next video.